food dialogues with in the near future, one that will help the audience and supporters as well to enjoy and partake in a meal. And I think this has seemed rather improbable until now. The idea, of course, is that we spend a lot of time, as Curtis also mentioned, discussing the academic aspects, the legal ramifications of all the different aspects of the food system. But this isn't how the conversation actually gets broken down and operates on the ground when it comes to cooking and eating. Every little act, so how we shop, where we shop, how we prepare food, why, yes, sure, it is political, but it's also a window into our heritage and our cultural backgrounds. And this informs our choices of what we eat and how we eat it to a large degree. So helping me to unpack these concepts, we have 3 chefs joining us. And I just wanted to see if, right, so we've got 2 with us at the moment, and we're going to start with an introduction. First of all, Mokgadi Itsweng. I would like, and the other chef is Jane and Nshuti. We're going to wait for Khanya to join us, but until then, I thought perhaps we could start with Mokgadi, just telling us briefly what it is you do in terms of all things food. Mokgadi.
Hi, Ishay. So lovely to be here this morning. What do I do with food? Whoa, I do a lot of things with food, but the one thing, well, most things that I do, I've been in the space for a while. I've been here for over 15 years. I've run a restaurant, so I've been a chef at a restaurant. I've worked in food media. I've been a food editor for 3 magazines. So I've been in the media side, so I understand food from that space. I've been, I've worked as a food activist, which I'm doing now, food justice activist, just to bring and to teach people around the food systems and the challenges that we're having right now with the food systems and what needs to happen. So also bringing my own ideas around how to move that, how to conscientize people, to show people what's happening in the food system. So all those things. And I'm a gardener, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a food entrepreneur. So I love creating products from, I work with urban farmers, and I like creating products from their surplus their surplus products, and just creating products out of food and vegetables and all sorts of things. So I'm a creative in the food space, and I'm constantly creating my role in the space. So that's me in a nutshell. And I'm very happy to be here.
Welcome. It's so good to have you here. And we're going to get into this a little later, but amongst other things, you're also a cookbook author.
And yes, we're going to of course.
We're going to this beautiful book. Jane, over to you. Can you please tell us about the work that you currently do? I think you may need to unmute yourself there, Jane.
Sorry about that. I was saying yesterday, my sister sent me a picture and she said, Jane, when you Google African food, this is what comes up. It was a plate of the most unattractive beans, which looks like they're soaked in water, with a big thing of meal pap. I remembered why I started doing what I'm doing. It's really to represent African food in the way that it should be represented, the variety that we have. And also growing up, I have been on a plant-based diet for the past 15 years. And every time I go to spaces, people will be like, you're Black and you're vegan. And these questions has always come up. And there's this thought that if you're Black, you need to eat pap and meat every single day, which it's really not even what our ancestors lived on. I was born in Rwanda, and the first time I ate meal pap was when I left Rwanda. I didn't know how that tasted. And later on, I even learned that maize was not an African crop. And I'm like, so where did we get that? Why do we always think that African food is limited to this and it's so unattractive? And so I have spent few years really trying to remove, to re-educate people as African plant-based food is concerned. So I ran like a pop-up restaurant. I do pop-up restaurant twice a month at Maker's Landing, where I teach. I mean, I display the food on the table, different types of food I grew up on, or just different food my friends from other parts of Africa have introduced me to, and people have been amazed that there is so much that Africa has to offer. And I also just do cooking classes where we are on different Africa, learning about food culture in different parts of Africa, and just learning about what they eat and where to source the ingredients that they use, because it's really hard to find things that other parts of Africa eat. They're not mainstream, and that is also something that I'm trying to find places around Cape Town where people can actually go and get these ingredients as well.
Well,
So
thank you so much for that. And I see the Tamu by Jane that you're wearing on the T-shirt. So this represents your current African pop-up that you're doing in Maker's Landing. So just to situate you, Jane, you are currently in the Cape, where you've been since 2000, and originally from Rwanda. Mokgadi, you are originally from Mamelodi side, and you're operating in Gauteng, correct?
Yes, definitely.
Okay, great. And I see that Khanya has joined us. And so so Khanya, just to keep you up to speed, we've just started with the introductions, and I'll ask you to come in here now and introduce yourself. Just tell us a little bit about what you do currently in the food world.
Okay, first of all, I'd just like to start by saying I'm really sorry I'm late, everyone. This shoot is crazy. But yeah, my name is Khanya Mzongwana, and I am a chef, I'm a food stylist, I'm a food writer, I'm a lot of things. And I also am the contributing food editor at Woolworths Taste magazine. So yeah, I think I've been doing that for about a year and a half. And yes, that's just it. That's just who I am.
Great, thank you, welcome. So also taking your time constraints into account, I'm going to start actually the first question with you. You wrote a wonderful book last year, an ebook called Shit's Real, Let's Heal. And that informs a great part of your approach, which is a focus on mental health and eating for well-being. I thought perhaps before we got to your plate, this could be a nice way for you to introduce us to your thought process in terms of mental health and that connection to eating well.
That is a long question. Okay, so just a little bit about the book, and my reasons around how it came about basically is it was lockdown. It was a book that I created in lockdown, an ebook, and it was just as COVID, started and turned everyone's lives upside down. And more than anything, I was living with my mom at the time, unemployed at the time. So this was kind of, it was just a way to make income, but it was also kind of, it had been a long time coming, and I just really wanted to share something. And I just wanted to share something with people that was going to give people hope. And also just because I had just come out of a space where, I had been diagnosed with depression and, bipolar disorder. And so the book itself, it's just like a collection of like Instagram posts, you know, where I'm just sharing the recipes. So everything in the book was shot on my phone, it was shot on an iPhone 6. But more importantly, or the important message in the book is just about kind of eating as a form of self-care, which I really don't like that term, but it's, yeah, eating as a form of self-care, and just kind of eating as a form of healing and meditation as well, you know, and just like helping people to get back in the kitchen by, you know, like creating aspirational looking plates, but which are really, really simple to put together. Yeah, so mental health is like a
Oh, sorry to interrupt, please continue. I just thought this was a nice moment for us to perhaps go through some of your slides in the background, if we can do that, unless it is happening already.
No stress. I don't. Okay. Yeah. So, you know, like mental health and mental well-being is a pretty big part of my life right now. And, you know, like, and I think everybody's lives, you know, and I know that COVID has really shone a light on a lot of kind of mental issues, you know, it has kind of exacerbated a lot of mental issues in people. And, you know, this was kind of the "you're not alone" that I was putting out there. And, you know, in the process, I don't know if I'm even, you know, like giving the book justice and explaining in enough detail what I was doing. And at the same time, you know, also around that time, yes, I can see the slides, but I'm just seeing one picture. That's, sorry, Kurt. And where was I? Oh, around the same time, I started a garden in my mom's house, or in the back of my mom's house. And it was a really, really tiny space, but I was just inspired to repurpose that space because it was just lawn. So I decided to repurpose the space and try and, you know, create a, you know, like a micro farm where I grow as many varieties of food as I can, you know, but being really economical with the space. And that has inspired a lot of my cooking, you know, like throughout my life, there's always just been a food garden, you know, whether it was my grandmother's house or my dad's house. And my dad was like the really great gardener in the family, and he taught me a lot about growing food. And yeah, so like going forward, you know, like it kind of really inspired and informed the way that I cook. Yeah, so like I place a lot of emphasis on ingredients. Ingredients are very important to me, vegetables in particular, you know, grains, and centralizing that in my cooking has also been like really affordable as well. And it's something that I have tried to inspire people to do as well. Yeah.
So while we're on this, Khanya, and if it's okay, Kurt, can we go back to slide 2, which is the image that Khanya has selected to represent her plate. And I just want to mention here something that you said. You said that, I mean, I know that as you've explained to us, in Port Elizabeth, you had a garden, and you have a close relationship to this, as you've explained, through your various family relationships to the garden and growing. And you have mentioned to us that your plate is a harvest of everything I've ever grown in my garden, mid-table, because I believe food is better shared. It is equal parts decadence, but also good for you, or at least balanced, and a visually indulgent, highly sensory experience to eat. So you've given us a good idea of what gardening means to you, and how you try to negotiate, navigate that when you selected this plate. So currently, I believe, are you without a garden? How is that going for you?
Oh, okay. So I moved to Cape Town. I live in Cape Town now. I moved here in March, and I live in an apartment with a really small balcony. But, you know, like, I think that I've gotten to a space where, you know, like growing food is just, it's a non-negotiable thing for me. It's been a really, really big part of my emotional and mental healing as well. And yeah, just being in touch with nature in that way. I think a lot of people can just attest to, you know, the healing properties of just being in a garden, you know, much less actually like growing things, you know, and also just the growing something successfully, you know, like it's kind of, you know, there's something that it does to it, there's a reward system of some sort that it kind of taps into. But sorry, the question was,
Yeah.
oh
Yeah.
yes, my garden
Yeah.
in my flat, farm in my flat, if you will. So on my balcony, I've got two like massive trommels that I put like soil and mulch in, and I'm growing. One has got herbs in it, and a couple of like small root vegetables, and I've got some beans, like what is it called? Runner beans. I've got broad beans that are coming out. I was growing some peas recently, very, very small harvest. And yeah, and I'm also growing some rainbow chard as well. All of this stuff on my tiny, tiny balcony. But, you know, I've become very economical with space, and I understand that stacking things up when you, especially when you're in a small space, is really effective, you know, and there's also some flowers as well. So
So
the
you've
balcony,
managed that space.
completely, I've really made the most of it.
That's
Yeah,
amazing.
so it's
So I
just a
wanted to,
mini
there's a couple of themes that have come up in what you've said, and I think a lot of people can relate to this. The very idea of gardening, even the garden, you know, I think the Japanese speak very highly of forest bathing. I know a very good friend of mine keeps saying that to me. Whenever stressed, go surround yourself at least with trees and plants. There's a soothing effect there. I myself have become a plant mama of indoor plants.
awesome.
Yes, this is, and you know, having no green fingers. So I understand, the pandemic certainly brought out a lot of a need to self-soothe. And I think in some ways growing is exactly what you said, perhaps a hit of dopamine in the reward system, but also it requires care in a different way. It's very absorbing. So while we have this plate, before I move on to another panelist, could you describe what is in the plate for us, on the plate?
Okay, I know the quality of this image is really terrible, but hopefully you can kind of get a sense of what's there. I think unlike the other panelists, I do eat meat. I don't know whether Jane and Mokgadi eat meat, but I do. So you know, the least, or the least that I could do is, you know, to sustainably source the meat that I do eat, and you know, when I do eat it. But so what this is for me is this is how I cook for myself when I'm feeling down. So this is something that I like to call like a texture plate, where you know how they do there's an exercise that or sensory exercise that one does when experiencing like high anxiety, you know, where you kind of do a grounding exercise, like what can you see, what can you smell, you know, etc. So this is kind of that for me in the form of food. So it's just a lot about tuning into how you're experiencing that food, you know. So the plate has got a lot of textures, a lot of different cooking methods, and it's really just low effort to prepare, because I what did I do here? I roasted some pork loin, or pan roasted some pork loin. Then I've got some like sheep's milk yogurt, and then I roasted butternut that I grew in my garden, and I curled some red spring onion that also comes from my garden. And you know, tomatoes are one of my favorite things to grow ever. So I always have a lot of tomatoes in the garden, and it's always just a surprise what they're going to look like. So I got these yellow ones, which were just sensational. And then there's also some baby spinach in there. There's some lentils, because, you know, grains are a very big part of my diet. And then also these red onions that they took forever to grow. And then when I finally pulled them out of the soil, they were just tiny. They were like cocktail onions. So yeah, I just figured they'd be like cute little addition. And yeah, and then there's some coriander seeds and flowers in there, you know, fresh coriander seeds. And that's about all I can see. Oh, and mint, growing like wildly in the
So
garden.
that's
Mint as
interesting.
well.
So I see on this plate, in addition to color, the texture that you mentioned. So one would be very mentally engaged, stimulated by this plate. So obviously, being somebody who grows vegetables and having a history of doing that, you're quite in tune with the seasons and seasonality as well. I thought maybe you could just tell a little bit about that. And just to explain to those listening, I'm going to speak to Khanya as fully as we can. And then in conversation with Jane and Mokgadi, we're going to switch between the two.
Okay.
So please, can you please tell us about what does seasonality mean, and how is that something we can be aware of?
Okay, so seasonality, if I was to, define it, it's just like, or define it in the sense of it with respect to how we cook, the reason that seasonality is important is because, like, you can find a chart on the internet that will tell you what's in season at the moment, what's going to be in season in spring, and why I buy my ingredients seasonally is because they're at their best when they're in season. They're more affordable when they're in season. Their nutrient value is way higher when they're in season, and you can also buy it locally. A lot of things that are out of season but on the shelves are imported, and of course, like it's a very important thing to support local farmers. That's really important. And then also, like I like to grow perennial veggies because I might know how to garden, but I'm not like perfect at it, and I don't always adhere to season. Sometimes I just put something in the ground and hope it works out. And I think like if you are starting out as a gardener, I think like perennial vegetables are the best, and then like in the colder months, I guess, like just before winter starts, like a month before winter starts or a month and a half before winter starts, that's when you start sowing all those winter vegetable seeds. And it's these are like important rules, but I don't necessarily adhere to them at all. So I've been
So
really
you're
lucky.
Renegade urban gardener.
Lol.
Can you please tell us, just give us an example, what are perennial vegetables that you mentioned?
Okay, so perennials are like things that just grow the whole year, right? And what has a lot of herbs, pretty much all the herbs are perennial. Green beans are perennial, onions, tomatoes, all kinds of tomatoes, a lot of the edible flowers as well. Lettuce, a lot of varieties of lettuce, spinach as well, just a lot of the staple veggies, what else have I not mentioned?
And
Squash
squash.
grows year round, but there's just like particular types of squash that kind of flourishes in the winter, like the niche stuff, like Hubbard squash, kabocha, which I don't even know if we have here in SA. I haven't seen it, etc.
Okay, so could we just slide between, could we just go through the slides now as we continue this chat? So I've noticed actually that I can pick up when you have styled a plate of food in your work. There's definitely a coherence to your work and a sensibility, I think, when it comes to the style. And I'm quite enjoying how you put these plates together. I was looking at some work you did on mushrooms as well, not very long ago. And it's really, really beautiful and rich, but there is this element of cohesion and sharing of different elements on that plate. We'd like to know any heritage associations for you with this very particular plate, because, as you mentioned, you grew up with the history of mom and dad, and also your grandma growing things. And on this very plate that you have posted, which I think is quite modern, are there any elements there that are reminiscent of your childhood? And if not, what could a potential plate be like that, represents some part of your childhood?
Okay, well, I cook like from a place of nostalgia generally, which I think we kind of all do. Like, I think I did an interview the other day where I was talking to a chef where, you know, we were talking about how, you know, the best way to cook is to cook what you know, like cook from a place of understanding, cook what you understand, and then work your way outwards, you know, and learn new things and apply them to what it is that you already know, you know. And that's very much where I'm coming from. I'm a very low tech cook, you know. I'm not a fancy baker or anything like that, and I don't have any um, major qualifications. I'm very much experience based, and my styling background, you know, I've had a lot of kind of from afar mentorship and stuff that I've received, and a lot of flipping through books and looking at what I like, you know, and kind of mimicking styles, but then also, you know, adding my own spin to it. And, you know, like it takes a long time to cultivate that food identity and stuff. But, you know, I definitely think that I've stepped into my confidence and I've stepped into my own style now. And yeah, like going back to what your question is, every time that I shoot something, I don't ever shoot like a plate. It's always like a platter that feeds about 7 people, you know, of because I just I think that it also visually plays a lot better when you serve something the way that you would serve it at a celebration on a special occasion, you know. Sharing plates are like my favorite thing. And yeah, like I think it just, like I say, it just looks better. It gives the ingredients more of an opportunity to shine. And yeah, it's just like, for instance, I shoot a lot of things from the top down, which is like, you know, one of those things that gets kind of tiring on the eyes, you know, because it's like, is this how all her plates look? And I think that the way that you receive a plate is it comes in front of you and then you look down at it, right? So I kind of I style with the perspective of the person who's going to be eating it. You feel me? But
And
yeah, like yeah, sorry.
sorry to interrupt, Khanya. The very idea of you speaking about a sharing plate also tells me a lot about, well, it gives me a clue anyway into, you know, upbringing and heritage as well. Because if we think about the way in which many of us from brown and black families and communities have always looked at food has been around the aspect of sharing. I mean, that's probably some of our biggest memories around food and the biggest enjoyment. So it actually makes perfect sense that you are presenting mushrooms, but what you're really presenting is a feast on a plate or a platter. And, you know, a mushroom in the best of their textures, and one in which, you know, different members of the family can enjoy in different ways. And yeah, I think there is, a lot of us come from cultures where the feeling is that, you know, there's a great deal of poverty in our family. So there's been a history of poverty, and yet all of us, the more and more I speak to people, the more I gather that when speaking about food, we speak about it in terms of abundance. Somehow, it's the simplest of food. So I want to ask you a final question with respect for your work deadlines and your timeline, Khanya. So in a country with such a rich cultural heritage, do you see this adequately represented in the mainstream, both media and supermarket? Obviously, we've seen changes in the last 5 years. So what's your opinion on this?
Look, yeah, like I say, I think that we could definitely be doing a lot more. Like you say, there are a lot of changes. There are a lot of, there's a lot more focus on, you know, heritage ingredients, ingredients that have been eaten for centuries, but we're not appearing on supermarket shelves or not appearing. And there's kind of there's become an accessibility, you know, to a degree of, you know, ingredients that were once kind of too rural and stuff, you know, to show up in the shops and stuff. But yeah, I think that I don't even know if I'm answering your question fully, but yeah, sorry, I forget things the moment that like they're asked. But
You have seen a change. You've noticed a change.
I fully noticed a change. I've noticed a change also in the way that people cook now. And I kind of, I'm not mad at the fact that you know, cooking Black food essentially has become trendy. I'm not at all mad at that. That's something that is, it's awesome to see it, you know, to see our food in the mainstream. It really is. And, you know, like a lot of people, a lot of us as, you know, I can only speak about Black people because that's all I really know. But I think a lot of us get mad about the fact that they think that their ingredients are being bastardized or whatever. But I think that like with any and all other cuisines, or ethnic cuisines, traditional cuisines, they all have to kind of, they all have to move with the times. And you know, the change is a natural thing. And the new ways that umngqusho, for instance, is showing up on menus, and you know, the ways in which we're exploring ingredients and we're mashing things up together, like, and food is kind of like the fences are coming down, the rules are being disregarded in the best ways, you know. And I really love to see it, you know, like I don't I don't really cook with any rules in mind, you know. I just, you know, I just kind of cook the way I feel, you know. Yeah, so I
Well,
think that's
thank you so much for that, Khanya, and we really appreciate your contribution and your plate as well. Thank you so much.
cool. Thanks, you guys. I'm gonna come back a little bit,
Yes, so
a
we're
little
gonna
bit later.
Yes, we're going to join you before the end, and we look forward to having you join us there. Mokgadi,
Thank you.
Thank you. I thought we could move on to yours, and we can play Mokgadi's slides as well. Mokgadi has chosen what she calls the wasteless plate to highlight food waste and how we can use up the whole plant, for example. That is edible. It's also good for our health, and perhaps we don't know about all of these. And the one that she selected was showcasing pumpkin. You can find this, of course, in her book Vegilicious, which is plant forward recipes from the garden of my dreams. And Mokgadi, so in line with the chef's manifesto that works to highlight the UN Sustainable Development Goals, which you are quite aligned with, you've chosen the wasteless plate, which features all these elements of the pumpkin. Can you please tell us first of all, what is a wasteless kitchen?
Yes, unmuted. Hi, thank you so much for having me, and it was so awesome listening to Khanya. I could listen to her the whole day. So for me, what is a wasteless kitchen? It's a conscious kitchen, and intentionally aware of the impact every single choice you make in the kitchen has on your health and on the health of the planet. So it's a conscious kitchen. It's a kitchen that is aware that we have a food waste problem in the world, that is threatening us as humans, but also just threatening the whole world. You know, on the 29th of September, I know you guys spoke earlier about the Food System Summit, but on the 29th of September is the International Day of Awareness of Food Loss and Waste. Why is this important? South Africa wastes 10 million tons of food every year. We produce 31 million tons every year. So if we're wasting 10 million tons, that's a problem. 44% of that is veggies and fruits, 26% of that is grains, and 15% of that is meat. That's a lot of food, especially in a country where a lot of people go home or go to sleep with no food. There's a lot of food insecurity also. So it's that balance that we haven't reached as South Africa. But I mean, the whole world is in a similar position. So we have a lot of unconscious eaters out there. And it's us. It's not people out there, it's us. It's the home cooks. We're not aware of the amount of the impact of waste. You know what impact waste has on us as human beings. So my plate basically is talks about that. It's basically just showing you what you can do with a pumpkin, for instance. pumpkin is one of the most wasted fruit or veg ever. You know, nobody pumpkin. It's just like, is this giant thing. It's like, okay, we'll just scoop out the flesh and throw the rest away, you know? Whereas a pumpkin, if you look at it, the seeds, for instance, the seeds you can regrow and have more pumpkins on your plate. The leaves can be eaten as morojo or greens. They're packed with nutrients. They're delicious. They're healthy for you. The seeds, obviously, you can roast them or you can regrow. The skins are the most wasted things. Nobody knows what to do with the skins. People just throw them away. You can wash the skins, chop them up, spice them, grill them, have nice chips. So the plate, basically, my Wasteless Plate shows you what you can do with a pumpkin. And I chose a pumpkin purely because in Zulu culture, it's very much interlinked with who we are as Africans and South Africans. In Zulu culture, for instance, families are seen to be joined together like a pumpkin plant. And, you know, when each pumpkin plant offshoots, it has another, it's almost like with the family, when the child leaves, gets married and has another pumpkin plant there. And so the pumpkin represents family in Zulu culture. So you'll find a pumpkin in a lot of things, you know. For instance, when when women have just had a baby, they made isijingu, which is pumpkin and bap, or pumpkin and maize, or pumpkin and isijingu also has pumpkin and millet. Depending on what, in which area you're in. You know, in Chivenda, it's still the same. It's called simpempe, but it's pumpkin with nuts and the green leaves and maize. So, it's the pumpkin becomes that thing that ties us around and ties us together as Africans, even as South Africans. So it's got a traditional rooting in South Africa, in Africa also. So I chose the pumpkin because I know it's the most wasted thing, but also it's something that ties us as Africans. So we eat it. Everybody eats the pumpkin, you know? So for me, the Wasteless Kitchen is about consciousness, is about waking up and understanding the impact that each and everyone's decision in the kitchen has on our future and also on the future generations to come. So waste is a serious, serious problem, but we as home chefs are the ones who are responsible for most of it, because we are still unconscious about waste and what it is, you know?
I just also want to make a note that Mokgadi explains the Wasteless Kitchen in very detailed steps on page 12 of her book, everything from creating a weekly menu, a pantry audit, first in, first out, and she's got, and then she goes on to explain how the recipes have been unfolded, and you can follow those. And I think that's something really worth looking at and keeping and referencing. Some of these tips one may also feel, oh, they're quite obvious, but we also very obviously ignore them. I've never had, a potato skin crisp, yes, but ever since the bars and restaurants made them popular back in the day. But
exactly.
We'd love to see a pumpkin crisp.
It is delicious.
I'm sure once it appears in the little, a snack menu, then it's going to become an everyday thing in our kitchens too. We just need that to take off. So thank you so much.
No, definitely.
We're going to come back.
I mean, what you just actually talked about now, about it going back into menus, and if it ends up on a famous chef's dish, then it becomes the thing. So that just shows the role of chefs, how important the chefs are. Even though for home cooks to change, we need the chefs to actually showcase Wasteless Kitchens more,
Absolutely. And I know chefs, of course, in collaboration with the manufacturers speak about, have been taking the lead in many ways when we look at sustainability around fish, particularly, in this country, in that at least. Okay, so I would like us to move just to Jane's plate as well. Kurt, if we could have a look at Jane's slides in the meantime, and we'll come back, Mokgadi, to discuss a little further. So Jane said, in our discussions, Jane mentioned that she wanted to share something that reflects her Rwandan heritage. And, she's been in South Africa for many years, as she's explained. But it's very, very tied to the recipes and the food cultural heritage of the Rwandan people. And as she also explained to us in her introduction, hers is a vegan approach. She has been plant-based for 15 years. So Jane, I would love to discuss your plate, and I would just like to make reference very quickly to our friend Mpho Shikudu's book, Eat Ting, which I know I've referenced a number of times in the past, because your plate features sorghum. And in her chapter, Did Apartheid Make Us Fat? Mpho mentions, I'm just going to read something here very quickly. She says, Black African farming was a subject to state-sponsored programs aimed at educating natives into growing Western vegetable varieties. Indigenous vegetables were often discouraged within such programs. There was also industrial milling interest in state-supported maize monopolies, because I remember you mentioning that you had never had, was it maize, white maize, until you came here. Maize was promoted at the expense of other starches. Big business interests promoted a two-tier maize output, resulting in a highly refined, nutrient-deficient and bleached primary product for human consumption, and a secondary one consisting of the byproducts, which was sold on as animal feed. So Jane, your decision to feature sorghum as the grain on your bowl, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Okay, so growing up, we probably ate sorghum every day in something. Every morning, my mom will wake up and we will make a soft porridge using sorghum. And whenever we go to weddings, so in Rwanda, in traditional way, they will not serve a cake. Instead, they will make like a sorghum pap where a bride and the groom, they will use a string to cut and then serve to their guests to show how they'll always welcome people into their home. And so sorghum basically features in every food memories that I remember as a child. And we use it to make traditional beer. We use it to we use it for pap actually instead of mealie meal, same as cassava pap. But it is something that we ate almost on a daily basis, and I will have done injustice if I didn't feature this amazing amazing grain that has contributed in raising me actually. So yeah.
So in your bowl, Jane, because I know there's one that you just did a day or two ago, and if we can go down in the slides, the one with the savory bean cake, there we go. Can you explain to us what is on this plate? So we've got sorghum, what's it mixed with? What's in the bean cake?
So let me start with the bean cake. So in Rwanda, we've got a dish we call igihembe. So this is where my mom will soak. Goes across different families. Our parents will soak beans overnight, and then the next morning they will a mat, and then we will peel them one by one until they're all finished, and then they will either make it into a sauce which we'll eat with the sorghum pap, or they will turn it into a steamed bean cake. So what used to happen is that while we are peeling the beans, that's when we will tell each other stories, and it will be such a fun thing because that is something which took long. So it was really a part of where families will connect because it's a lot of beans, so everyone needed to get involved. And so it's this two thing really brought me back to how I grew up, as in there are times my mom will boil sorghum and will just give them to us to snack on while she's busy cooking. And so when I was putting together, thinking I want my mom boiled sorghum, but I also just want to add more vegetables because I love vegetables. So I have mint in there. I have
Mhm.
parsley, and I have a little bit of lemon and garlic
Mhm.
and onions and a
Mhm.
little bit of tomato and cabbage, just to
Mhm.
add more nutrients, and also just to uplift a little bit my mom plain sorghum, boiled sorghum as well. So yeah.
And especially because you're taking this grain to people who perhaps have never had an opportunity to consume sorghum, which of course we know is really sad because it's difficult to even purchase sorghum here. And I think maybe that's something that we can chat about very briefly now. Uh, how can we, the general consumer, get hold of this natural traditional grain? Are you seeing things change? I mean, where does one go to purchase it?
I haven't really seen sorghum in the mainstream like stores, apart from, let's say, the mini ones like Matabela, which is also probably added into other things. But I haven't seen like the grain themselves in ShopRite, Checkers, or all these other stores. So I get mine from specialized stores like Komati and
Mm,
so on, which is a shame. I still don't understand how something so indigenous to Africa will not be found in African stores. But that also goes to many other African grains.
mm,
I was talking to my friend the other day that it's so hard to find a grain such as fonio in Africa,
mm,
when I could just walk to any shop and I'll find quinoa, for
mm, mm.
understand
Yes.
how that that works when something which is indigenous to the continent, it's not available to the people of the continent. But whenever, even online, when I look for fonio, I'll find probably one. I only find local village as the one that supplies that in the whole South Africa. Every other places it was in
Yeah.
America. And I'm like, this is so
Yeah. And the
funny that,
and the price point as well
yeah,
is is really incredibly you know unachievable. It makes it inaccessible, and we come down to these ancient grains being culinary birthright. We want to encourage uh, people to eat it, but then it also becomes the domain of people with wealth, you know,
exactly.
uh, and which of course is it just
It's
tilts the
really,
system. It works against everything that
mm,
you and the other chefs are doing to make
yeah,
food accessible and to increase the knowledge base around these foods, because we do it, but then we do it for a very small audience who can
who
seek
can
them out
afford it
online
as well?
and who can
Yeah.
pay for it. So in that regard, yeah, I think we all know and all agree that things do have to change. Mokgadi, uh,
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
you are back with us, and I think maybe this is a good point for you to also contribute to this question about where we see in this country, which has such a rich cultural heritage, but we don't always see these ingredients marketed in the mainstream, both media and supermarket. Of course, I'm asking you this also because I know that you worked for many years in an editorial role, so you would have seen what you were allowed to and what you did publish and how that has changed late. So maybe you can just take us through that.
Well, I believe that because a lot of people, the people that are meant to be buying these ingredients haven't woken up to them yet. And because there's no demand, there's never any supply. And the moment we start asking for these ingredients, then they'll be available. Because I really, even farmers don't grow them. That's why you'll only have like one person who sells them, and they cost a lot of money for people, so the ordinary person is not going to go buy or even go looking for it because it costs so much. But I think it's just really a thing of supply and demand. And me, over the years, what I've done is I've literally spoken about these these ingredients so they can come back, so people can remember and demand them and want them, and try and find ways around getting these ingredients onto their tables. And now more and more farmers, small scale farmers, are now growing these ingredients, but chances are you'll find them in like very awkward places still, because again, if we demand the ingredients, then they'll stock them, because people, a lot of people don't know anything about the ingredients, about our indigenous ingredients. And I think education needs to happen, and it needs to. And now I love it, because it means that more and more people are learning and accepting, or bringing them back into their kitchens, even trying to to find ways in to use them. It's going to be tough for a while, because again, it's just trying to get people to know about these ingredients so they can ask for them. And if they don't ask for them, you won't get them. Look, what's happened during my time as food editor for True Love, I understood my mandate, and I understood that I had a platform, and my platform was to educate. I couldn't abuse that platform, and for me, I tried to bring back, all those indigenous ingredients, spoke about them, did recipes, also just, again, just waking people up around what we have, and the beauty of what we have as South Africans. And also, I mean, the thing with, with eating, what Mpo did there was, she really was doing exactly the same thing. She was opening people up and teaching them about why we're eating maize, why are we, just literally waking people up to be conscious about that can't only happen just during Heritage Month, and then from October people are back to to not eating indigenous foods, to not talking about them, to not, because it's like no, we must just stuff everything into Heritage Month and leave it at Heritage Month, and we'll eat them. It's almost like our heritage clothes, our traditional clothes that we only wear this month, and that's it. You hang them away. We can't. This for us going forward as Africans, I mean, it's more urgent now than ever. It's urgent. It's not even a thing, a nice to have or a need to have, but it's a matter of our health. Indigenous ingredients are good for our health, and they're good for the health of the planet. A lot of them are drought resistant. A lot of them add nitrogen into the soil, so they regenerate the soil. So it's important for us, especially in platforms like this, to discuss these things and talk and see what, and tell people why they need to care. Because people will tell you, why should I care? I love pasta, and leave me alone. I want my pasta. No one is saying don't eat pasta, but you need to be conscious around your food miles. Where does that pasta come from? Was it flown in? Was it made by someone around the corner? If it's made by someone around the corner, then it's good pasta. But if it was flown in from where you have a problem, because there's food miles in there, there's carbon. The carbon footprint is hectic. You don't need that kind of karma for your soul. So for me, it's question. Find out where your food comes from. Question, where does this meat come from? This chicken, where does, I'm a flexitarian, so I eat mostly a plant-based diet. So I'll eat vegetables and everything. And once in a while, I'll have a piece of fish, but I want to know where my fish comes from. I want to go onto Sasi and say, what's sustainable for me today? And I look at that, and I have another app, Abalobi, and I find out from them what's happening, what are the small scale fishermen bringing in. So I question everything that I put in my body, because for me, again, there's no option. I have to question, because again, you need to be, as a conscious person, as a conscious eater, as a conscious consumer, you need to question. And with questioning and being conscious actually makes the farmers be more responsive, but more than anything, then they become accountable to you. So you know that your food is good, and you know that your food is healthy for you. You're not just eating food just for the sake of eating food. So for me, it's not just about having these ingredients just njefela for Heritage Month, we need these ingredients. It's much more, you know, they actually hold the key to our health as Africans.
So yeah, I mean, you brought out brilliant points. We've been discussing these over the years, as I know, in different ways. You know, about first of all, educating people. Second of all, creating demand so that there will be supply, because farmers obviously need that. I mean, you know, they grow what they think we want as well. I mean, speaking specifically of the small scale farmers who farm in an organic manner as well. Yeah, and so thank you so much for that. So Jane, I would like to bring you in here as well. I would love to know what would you like your guests to take away after they have been, you know, to one of your lunches or one of your dinners. What for you is one of your ultimate goals in terms of what you want to share with them?
So for me, it's very important that they know that there is more to African food than maize meal, pap, and meat. That is for me, it's very, very important, and that's why I bring out variety. We do things like, and also I liked what she's talked about, how you eat everything. Like growing up, my mom used to make cassava leaves, and then she would also make cassava pap, and that's where we will eat a whole plant
Yeah.
together. And so that is also something that I like to do too, so that they know that there are so many things also we have been very ignorant about, that which are food. Growing up, we used to have a lot of what is this, hibiscus growing at at in our garden, but for us it was flowers. It was just flowers. I never knew that you can make a delicious tea using the same flowers that we used to waste up and down. And also when we go to South Africa, we of amaranth, and nobody used to harvest them. And I'm like, but I grew up eating this. We
Eating
ate
them.
amaranth almost every single day in Rwanda, in Kenya, in DLC. That was our staple vegetables. But then I go to Nelspruit, nobody eats them. And my siblings and I went into the bush, and then we picked them up, and everyone thought we were crazy. And so these are I want people to know that it's not like the problem of Africa. It's not really about only about food security. It's food knowledge. We don't know that we are sitting with food most of the time. We waste food because we are not aware that it's actually food. And so whenever they come, I introduce every dish, let them know what it is, and where also they can find it in bushes and everywhere else, that and they add it into their everyday so I think for me it's really people to be aware, first of all,
Yeah.
and to know that there is more, and there is more healthier options as well.
So a bit of guerrilla foraging there,
Yeah.
Jane.
But the thing about what you just said, Jane, about us not knowing our food. I mean, I grew up eating amaranth. I still forage for it because there was a link between me and that amaranth. My grandmother was the link. So we've broken those links. The reason people don't know, it's not because don't know that there's food there. It's because that link, that knowledge, that indigenous knowledge system is broken. So people don't even know, you know. But again, yes, that's why it's important for people like us to bring back, to talk about that and say, actually, this is amaranth. It grows wild everywhere. It's called morojo. It's called tepe. It's called imbuya. Like you'll find in Zulu, they call it imbuya, and they eat it in Zulu, and people still love eating it, but they just don't know where to find it. And it's like, it's literally out there on the streets, you know, by the side of the highway, you'll find amaranth growing wild there. So people just, and also you must also remember we've had like stigma around our food, stigma that has been placed on us for years, you know, and that stigma has carried us, which is why there's no that broken chain has happened is because of that stigma, because then people come to the cities and they don't want to eat. We don't want to eat that food. We grew up eating that when we were poor out in the rural areas. We don't want that eat that food. So we're not teaching our children about that. So the reason for that is, again, that lack of knowledge, I guess, and also a self-esteem that's attached to our food. And people think when you start to make money, you stay away from the greens, you stay away from from the veg. You only have meat.
Yes, meat is a sign of prosperity. And
Yes.
I think there are two things. I mean, sometimes I feel we speak about them ad nauseum, but I think it's always worthwhile mentioning this, like the need for mentioning the need to educate is also the impact of colonialism on these indigenous food knowledge systems. And I think this is something that not enough people know about or engage with and truly understand how in a very short space of time, what was a very rich cultural heritage tied with plants and grains and even the consumption of meat in a way that was sustainable. You speak about the plants being drought resistant, for example, how that was severed, and how we have the introduction of wheat, for example, and how we have the introduction of maize, and not just the introduction of maize and wheat, because both by themselves could be wholesome, but at their lowest common denominator, just such nutrient poor food versions, sort of to feed a mass of people and kept them fed, but also kept them, nutritionally starved. When we speak about biopower, we can also look at that, the power that the state had over the body using just wheat and also maize. That, of course, a discussion for another time in depth, but I think these are things that we need to engage with and need to also be part of this package of understanding why we ourselves have lost the connection to our food systems, And yes, it's tragic, but there are people like Mpho, like yourself, like Tracy, like Joy, in different ways, working either in the gardening sphere, working in sort of the medicinal sphere, who are trying to, to come together, Jane as well, Khanya as well, and in whatever way showcase the traditional foods. And I think if we look at that, there is I've seen sort of a revolution, a soft revolution happening. It's nothing been planned, it's nothing overt, but you see all of these changes. If I look at the span of 15 years working in covering food stories, I've seen how that has changed. And I think that's extremely encouraging. And on this note, I think it would also just be a good moment for us to perhaps comment on each other's bowls of food. And there are similarities, and if there were any differences. I want to see if Khanya is here on our chat as well. I do see her in the background, but Khanya, if you are here, can you please join us? And if not, we're just going to go ahead. So Mokgadi, maybe you would like to comment on Jane's plate and what she's chosen and what you see as a similarity or something different from your own cultural heritage.
I love Jane's plate. I'm also a big sorghum advocate. I've got sorghum recipes, I think about 4. I even make breads in my book because I am completely obsessed with sorghum. Mpho and I are the same like that. We're very obsessed with sorghum because it's one of those underrated grains, and it's pure and it's good for the earth. It's a super grain, that doesn't get its worth out there in the world. And so I love your plate, and I love those bean cakes. Yeah, I'm I'm a flexitarian, and I eat a lot of vegetables, and beans are my favorite. So cowpeas are my absolute favorite, cowpeas and bambara nuts. So I looked at that bean cake and I was like, I'm gonna attempt a bean cake using bambara nuts, because that bean cake looks killer. It looks like it's so delicious. So I really appreciate your plate. It is so, it looks amazing, but it's also very creative. I love how you made a bean cake. A bean cake is just something so out there, you know, and especially with our South Africans, our beans, we do our beans differently, and to see them being done like that, and I'm like, yeah, that is delicious. Why didn't I think of that? That is amazing. Yes. So I love that. And I'm a sorghum girl, so I'm very happy with your plate, and I can't wait to be in one of your events and just chow down on your food. Yeah, I love your plate.
Thank you so much for that, Mokgadi. And I wanted to say before we move to Jane, one of the biggest, or one of the loveliest things I find with these panels and speaking to chefs is when you connect amongst yourselves as well. Maybe you've known each other, but then you have an opportunity to, you know, really support each other's work, and that is really joyful. So thank you for that. And Jane, what's your perspective on Mokgadi's Wasteless Pumpkin Plate? Do you see any similarities there with your own food heritage?
I think I just mentioned it but it's exact. I grew up on pumpkin as well, and I also grew up on pumpkin leaves as well. So it was. I love the way it's like my mom basically here, because we used to have pumpkin leaves with a little bit of peanut flour because my mom put peanut in everything. But then she'll make really amazing pumpkin leaves together with pumpkins as well. And when I saw your plate, I was like, wow, this reminds me of home. But then I've never thought of using the the skin. Then I was like, this is extremely creative, and that is really something that I'm going. In pumpkin seeds, we had so many stories at my grandmother's house with pumpkin seeds, and then we will sit around the fire as she's roasting pumpkin seed, and she'll be telling us stories about pumpkin seeds. Of course, all fairy tales and all, but it really takes me back to my childhood. And but what I love the most is the beauty of the picture, because I feel like the biggest problem that we have is how African food is marketed and how it looks. And it doesn't look appetizing most of the time. That it's not definitely, and we eat first with our eyes. And I will want to eat this plate. I'll probably finish it. Because it looks beautiful. It really looks so attractive. And I
Thank
think
you.
this is where we need to go to like add such images online so that the bad images can go down.
Yes, I agree with
We
you.
really need to just bombard such
Yeah.
images
Yes.
online, and I feel like we are pioneering something amazing, and with more people like us who are bringing such images, such ingredients on the table, we may actually change the way the world sees
Yeah.
our food, and we need to stop complaining and put it out there.
Yeah. That's a very powerful point, Jane. And, you know, we live in a world that's just very visually enticed, isn't it? Everything. I mean, all of you are using social media, Instagram, that kind of thing. So yeah, it is, the visual is important. And I think as long as we represent what the Western world sometimes calls ethnic cuisines, as you know, the way it does appear on Google already, it just truly doesn't do justice to any of the foods we grew up with. And yes, some of them don't necessarily photograph well, but anything can be styled. And you yourself as a stylist, and Khanya as well, can attest to that. So I'm going to do a last check to see if Khanya is available to join us. But if she's not, I would like to ask anyone listening in if they had any questions to ask, if they could share that in the Q&A box. Anything else you would like to ask the panelists about their plate, about the work that they're doing, please feel free to do that. And I think on a closing note from the three of us, Jane and Mokgadi, First of all, thank you so much for your time, and to Kurt for hosting this conversation. Is there anything that you would like to share with the people who are listening in terms of ways they can support you or find you?
So I'm on all social media. So as Mokgadi Itsweng, I do a pop-up once every 4 months since COVID, and it's called The Plate with Chef Mokgadi. Recently we had picnics, which was spread out in the garden, but it's plant-based. It's a plant-based picnic, so we're trying to open people up to more veg, just to a life that is packed with vegetables. So again, to break that stereotype that vegetables are boring or can never have food with no meat. We really, it's such a beautiful space, and everybody, I mean, we normally partner up or collaborate with musicians. So the last time we had Pops Muhammad, and it was beautiful. We were out in the garden, and people were just blown away by the vegetarian meals that we provided. So follow me, buy my book. My book is available at all leading retailers or bookstores. So Exclusive Books, Take a Lot, CNA, PNA, Bargain Books, Love Books in Melville, a whole lot of places. So you can really find this amazing books. It just literally just opens your eyes up around sustainability and just being a green person at home, saving food, how to start your own garden, like Khanya said, because part of being conscious and running a conscious kitchen is being awake, and nothing keeps you awake as much as a garden. It really is, helps you with presence. It helps you be really present in your life, and presence is what we need. Consciousness is what we need going forward as consumers, as foodies, as people that are in charge of other people's stomachs.
Yeah, thank you for that, Mokgadi. And I must say, one of the things I take away from what you've been saying today is the phrase, the conscious eater. And I think that in itself says a lot, and it definitely resonates. Thank you. And Jane, where can we support you, find you? What are you up to?
Yeah, like Hale, you can actually find me on Instagram or all social networks actually. But I host a plant-based African feast twice a month at Maker's Landing, and I also do a cooking class once a month as well. Same place, Maker's Landing. So the cooking classes are really to introduce people to different African foods from different parts of Africa. So we started with Egypt. On Heritage Day, we are going to do Ethiopian. So with that, I also invite other home cooks from these parts of Africa to join me, so that they can tell. I can make falafel, but I cannot tell you a full history of falafels like somebody from Egypt. So that's why I invite somebody from these countries to come and actually share stories about their childhood and the food they grew up eating during our classes. So yeah, it's been amazing and well supported as well. And I also really just want people to know that there is so many ingredients, there is so many flavors around Africa, and I'm trying to bring them all. Just the way we are colorful. My food is as colorful as well, and so yeah, I hope to see some of you guys there at one of the feast.
Thank you so much, Jane. And I just want to clarify, Maker's Landing is at the waterfront. So that is a food installation or food building that's dedicated to all kinds of food suppliers. And yeah, that's where you can find Jane. And in Khanya's absence, I would like to say you could follow some of her work at Woolworth's Taste magazine, and you will see the personification that we spoke about of those platters that she loves to style, and the flavor that she brings there. I think it's also a very good point place for us to also mention some of our colleagues who are also doing this kind of work when it comes to making us conscious and spreading and educating us a little more about indigenous foods, about the foods we grew up with. And it will be wonderful at some point for us to see a bookshelf, I think, with all of these books, Hopes and Mukhaus and Zanele's, your work as well, Mokgadi, on a shelf together, along with the late Ma'am Doris Satole's as well. And I look forward to seeing an indigenous food bookshelf at our local bookstores. I think that would be wonderful, and especially if that is top tier. Take all my money. So on that note, I would just like to thank Kurt and the people at Food Dialogues for hosting us. As you know, you can also get involved in this by sharing your plate, and Kurt is going to tell you a little bit more about that again. Thank you so much.
Lovely. Thank you, Ishay, Mokgadi, Jane, in our absence, Khanya. That was really such an important, interesting, and beautiful conversation. So much shared and so much learned. So thank you for that, for making time, for your contributions, for your publications. Yeah, really very, very grateful. And for those who may not have caught all of this, or may want to go back to it, or may want to share it with others, this talk has been recorded and it is available for replay on the fooddialogues.info platform. So please tell your friends, send people back to it, because I think there are so many important things that were said. I mean, just one quote that jumps out, that sticks in my mind. I mean, Jane was saying, we may actually change the way the world sees our food. I mean, such really, in some ways, simple things, but so powerful, and when said with such clarity, just really kind of resonate as true. So please, I hope you'll join us in helping share what was shared today even further. In line with what Ishay said, we do encourage you, and frankly, anyone who's interested, to also share your plate of food. If you think about what Mokgadi, Jane, Khanya brought to the table and how it represented their history, their family, their spiritual beliefs, their relationships with friends and family, their travels, their ethical, their environmental concerns and aspirations, we very much would like to invite you to do the same kind of thing. I don't know that anyone will achieve the level of aesthetic styling and gorgeousness of some of our panelists. They are the professionals and paid to do this very well, but sorry, I'm not sure how well you're paid. They do this very well and they're paid for it, is what I mean. I don't think styling food is a way to riches, but it is incredibly memorable and beautiful. And if you can please do the same yourself, just share either a video or a couple of photos of your plate of food on Twitter or Instagram, and just tag us at the Food Dialogues. There's an underscore between food and dialogues, or use the hashtag Food Dialogues SA. And then we'll share that on and help curate a number of these as a way to express some of the breadth and diversity and perspectives of South African and African food culture. So please do that. And then before closing, I just want to remind everyone that we are having one more panel discussion that will be happening on the 14th of October, so a few weeks away. And that will be unpacking the connections between global events like the UN Food Systems Summit happening, kicking off tomorrow, and what the link is with our local food context. So many of the things that were in conversation today, the disappearance of indigenous grains, the loss of local knowledge, the devaluing of these things, the disruption of the livelihoods of smallholder farmers, the lack of connections between home cooks and everyday eaters and retail and farmers. All of these things are actually on the table in one way or another at these food system summits. And yet, what difference do they make? And why should we care? And these are some of the dynamics that will be unpacked. The tensions in our food system locally, there are tensions in the global food system. Are they the same? Are they different? And how do we understand that? So We're very fortunate to have that talk occurring on the 14th. It'll be chaired by Professor Julian May, who's the director of our National Center of Excellence in Food Security. So please do make time for that. You'll hear more about it through social media and on our website. And that'll also be at 10 in the morning. So a final thank you to Ishay, Mokgadi, Khanya, Jane. Really are grateful for you making time, for sharing your perspectives, your beautiful work, and the ways that we can connect and learn from you further. Thanks also to our co-host and sponsor, Solve at the Waterfront. That was a wonderful shout out to some of the work that Solve has been supporting through the Maker's Landing. I know that Jane has gone through one of their incubation kind of programs, which has been very important. And they continue that good work in part by supporting what we're doing here. And then also to our co-sponsor, the Center of Excellence in Food Security, and to both of them for making this year's Food Dialogues possible. And to everyone who is here in attendance, thank you. Thank you for making your time. All the best for the rest of your day. And we hope to see you again soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.